The new Transformers movie has just come out and serves as a sequel to Bumblebee from 2018. While this movie is nowhere near the level of Bumblebee, I still thought it was a decent sequel and a decent Transformers movie, while still having many of the problems that most Transformers movies have. The first of which is the human characters. Once again, the human characters continue to be the worst part of these movies. While these characters are not nearly as bad as the Michael Bay Transformers movies characters, they still drag the story down a lot. Every time they appear on screen, I just want the movie to go back to Optimus Prime and Mirage rather than Noah Diaz. However, I must admit there are actually some writing put into these human characters, unlike the Michael Bay movies. Michael Bay Transformers movies at least knew what they were and were clearly focused on the actual Transformers, and as a result, nearly every human character was a bumbling moron, incredibly annoying, or an attractive female that had nothing to do. These movies relied on their Transformers and the special effects used to bring them to life, and as a result, most of the action scenes in those movies still hold up. I don't know if I can say the same about the action in Transformers Rise of the Beast. Most of the action seemed forgettable, and I've never been a fan of the cartoonish design of the Transformers. I think that's what brings the movie down for me. I used to love the real-looking Transformers from the Michael Bay movies, and I feel like that art design could have improved this movie a lot. Besides the visuals, though, the sound design for this movie I also felt was lacking compared to the Michael Bay movies, making me miss them even more. I will say I like the voice acting of all the Transformers in this, though, especially from Ron Perlman, Michelle Yeoh, and Peter Cullen. I was never taken out of the movie because of these voice actors and love seeing Ron Perlman as a gorilla for the whole movie. I also wanted to point out how boring the main villain of Unicron was in this movie. He is barely in it, and when he is, I felt like he was overshadowed by Scourge, who's supposed to be his henchman, but kind of overshadows Unicron throughout the whole plot. I thought Scourge's design was really good, especially all the symbols he had on him that he takes from all of his fallen enemies. He literally pulls their symbols off and puts them on his shoulder, and felt like he was much more imposing of a villain than Unicron. The movie also sets up some interesting ideas at the end for a possible sequel, which I'll get into in spoilers, but I don't really know if I would be interested in seeing these characters continue. Now, with all that being said, I am going to go into spoilers now, so feel free to skip ahead to the timestamp on screen to hear my final thoughts and rating of the movie. But without further ado, spoilers. So besides the main human characters and the designs of the Transformers, my main problems with this movie revolve around its plot. I was rather enjoying the story up until the museum fight, and then it's just like the movie starts sprinting towards the finish line in terms of pacing. It was really distracting for me. It's hard to describe it without seeing the movie, but basically everything is immediately given to the characters or explained to them as they need it, and in terms of the villains, they constantly get what they need almost immediately in order to move on with the story. In Peru, our heroes lose the main artifact they're going for. One of their friends dies, they mourn their death, rally to stop the villains, and arrive at the final battle in like 3 minutes. It's ridiculous. I also found the ending extremely bizarre, as Unicron has been defeated for maybe a minute or two, and Optimus is already starting his end of the movie hero speech. It was incredibly odd and just felt completely rushed. I was just thrown off by how fast the movie ended after that final fight, and it just made me feel like the writers didn't know where to go with the story after Unicron was defeated or do anything with the characters. Something else I wasn't prepared for was the primals in the movies. These are the animal Transformers. The movie is called Rise of the Beasts, and they are barely in it. We get a short intro to them at the start of the movie, and then they don't show up for like another hour and a half. Then in the final battle, we barely see them, and they only transform once, maybe twice on screen, which I thought was a real letdown. I thought that the movie the characters were named after would have a bigger role, but I guess they didn't want to go for that and rely on the older Transformers like Optimus and Bumblebee. If you wanted to see this movie for the primals, I feel like you would be extremely disappointed by how little they're in it. And speaking of Bumblebee, I also feel like the resurrection of him was extremely rushed. He dies early on in the first fight of the movie and then gets brought back to life in the final fight extremely quickly. A beam goes off and we see some energon that he's dead lying on top of in a cutaway shot kind of light up, and then like 2 to 3 minutes later he's in a plane jumping into the main fight, and I just thought that was extremely rushed as well. Again, that pacing is just odd choice all around. I also hated the power suit Mirage turns into. In the final fight, Mirage actually dies and turns into a suit of armor that the main character, Noah Diaz, can fight in and like wear. And once Noah has the suit on, he actually stands a chance against most of the bad guys who are known as the Terracons. He's still the size of a normal human, but he easily defeats waves and waves of the Terracons and is able to even pull Optimus Prime out of a black hole to safety in order to save the day. At that point in the movie, I was already kind of losing interest and kind of out of it, but that kind of sealed the deal to me, just how over the top and odd some of the choices were in the script. The last big spoiler that comes at the end is that Noah is going to a job interview and gets recruited by none other than the G.I. Joes. And I guess that means the next movie in this is going to be a reboot of G.I. Joe as well as a crossover with the Transformers, which I don't understand. It's odd that every movie nowadays needs a crossover between franchises or needs to be turned into a cinematic universe, and G.I. Joe and Transformers just seems like an incredibly odd choice, and I don't know if I'll be interested in seeing that. But in the end, I didn't really hate Transformers Rise of the Beast, but I didn't really love it either. I was very mixed in the middle. There are some good moments, but they're just overshadowed by the terrible human characters throughout the movie and the very bad and odd pacing in the second half of the film. I definitely felt this movie was more geared towards kids than previous Transformers movies, but I might have only noticed this since it's been about a decade since the last time I saw one of these in theaters, but I definitely noticed it in this one. There was some good comedy, including some actually good jokes for the older audience in the movie, but there was also just a lot of comedy I could have done without. I don't hate this movie, and if you're a fan of the Transformers, I feel like it's definitely at least worth seeing if you have some free time, but by no means should you go out of your way to see that. With all that being said, I'm going to give Transformers Rise of the Beasts a 6 out of 10. If you want to ask any questions or add to this discussion, be sure to leave a comment below. If you're enjoying the content, please consider leaving a like or subscribing if you want to stay up to date with my videos. I try and get these out whenever a new movie comes out, and I also have a podcast every Tuesday. Thank you again for all the support, and I will see you guys in the next review.
And if you don't know, now you know.